And we'll go live now. Give it a minute while we get some folks logging in. Okay, good evening. Welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Jessica from Greenlight, and we are thrilled to host tonight's event with Kliph Nesteroff presenting his new book, We Had a Little Real Estate Problem, The Unheralded Story of Native Americans and Comedy. He's going to be talking tonight with Bobby Wilson and Migizi Pensoneau of the 1491s, so you are in for an excellent time. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Kliph, Bobby, Migizi, and the team at Simon & Schuster for making this happen, and to you guys for showing up. Though we're not able to host events in our store spaces right now, our community of authors and readers is still here. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make space for conversation and connection. Couple little housekeeping things before we get started. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they can't see and hear you. They can see you're here though, and you can see a count of fellow attendees on the top of your Zoom screen. There are a couple different ways you can interact with the authors and with each other throughout tonight's event, which we definitely encourage. The first one is the chat, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like a speech balloon. You're welcome to post your comments and thoughts in the chat. It's a great way to show your appreciation for the author and interact with fellow attendees. Just make sure you have panelists and attendees selected so everyone can see what you're saying. If you have a specific question you'd like to have answered, please post that question in the Q&A. You can find that by clicking on the icon that looks like two speech balloons. We're going to be pulling the questions only from the Q&A to be answered in the later part of the program. And very importantly, tonight's featured book, We Had a Little Real Estate Problem, is available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. You can shop in person in our bookstore locations 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. every day of the week, and you can purchase Kliph's book and many others on site, or order online at greenlightbookstore.com for a quick pickup at the store or for shipping anywhere in the US. I'll drop the buy link in the chat in a moment. If you care about supporting the careers of authors and the ongoing existence of independent bookstores, buying tonight's featured book is a great way to show your support. So next, lucky for you guys, instead of hearing me read a canned introduction, you're actually going to hear a much better and more interesting introduction from the author of this book, Kliph Nesteroff. So please join me in welcoming to the stage, Kliph, Bobby, and Migizi. Take it away, guys.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Talking about this book, We Had a Little Real Estate Problem, The Unheralded Story of Native Americans and Comedy. That is the publisher's subtitle so that white people know what it's about. Welcome, gentlemen. For those watching who don't know, Migizi, Bobby are two of the 5 members of the 1491s, a hilarious sketch comedy troupe. And welcome, gentlemen, both of you. Ooh.
Hello. So, getting your teeth brushed. Are you on the toilet? Right? Are you on the toilet right now?
I am sitting on the toilet. My daughter really loves brushing teeth. You like brushing teeth? She's into it. I'll just show you. All right, look away. Don't look at her.
Teach them early, man. Teach them early before those teeth come in. Drill it into them.
I think we got a little dentist.
I'm so glad you're both here. I wanted to ask you, before we get into the book, it's sort of an exciting time, I think. You know, this book is exciting. There are 2 TV shows coming out this year, which respectively worked on. And I want to ask you about those both right now, because I'm really curious about it. Reservation Dogs, a new sitcom, dropped its trailer this week. Bobby, you worked on it, wrote on it, acted in it. And then also Reservation Dogs, which hasn't, I don't think, dropped a trailer yet, coming out on FX later this year, which Mig, you worked on. I wanted you guys to tell the people at home what these shows are. And they're both comedies, right? Reservation Dogs is also a comedy, is it not?
Yeah, yes. I hope so.
Fucking better be.
Yeah. Otherwise, I've been doing some really weird writing.
You know what's funny about Reservation Dogs is it made me realize how like hard it is, or can be, to, at least for me, to describe what Native comedy is, because people haven't really seen that shit. Like Reservation Dogs is about 4 teenagers on a reservation who are like struggling with the death of their 5th friend, and it's hilarious. There's meth heads, there's there's all sorts of wild stuff.
Aesthetically, it looks amazing. All I've seen is some of the iconography that they're using, but it looks like really like stunning. I know Sterling is all, everything Sterling does has a visual flourish that is just like very grabbing or grasping.
Yeah, I think
What about-
people say that, but it's just Oklahoma. You just go point your camera out anywhere in Oklahoma, and you're like, wow, everything looks so beautiful, and like there's just the right amount of rust and ruggedness. You're like, no, it's just Oklahoma, man.
I've
Just
never been to Oklahoma, so I'll take your word. But there are certain places like that, the desert, Death Valley, New Mexico. There's a lot of like, it is cinematic on its own. What about Rutherford Falls, Bobby? What is that show? When does it come out? Why is it exciting?
Well, it's exciting for me because I'm in it. I wrote on it, and I love everything about it. It's a comedy come from NBC Peacock. It'll be streaming on April 22nd, starring Ed Helms, Jana Schmieding, Dustin Milligan, Michael Gray Eyes, Jesse Lee. It's like an all-star cast, man. I'm super digging it. Co-created by Sierra Teller Ornelas, Michael Schur, and Ed Helms. It's gonna be a fucking blast.
And Sierra is in this book as well, co-creator of Rutherford Falls. Sterling Harjo.
Barely though. You should have really put. Why didn't you talk to her more, huh? She got a lot of stuff to say.
I think she was actually the last person that I interviewed for this whole book. There's also a lot of people and that got cut out of this book, believe it or not. But that was not an editorial comment on them so much as my editor was like, "There's too many people. I don't know who's who." So some people just went by the wayside. I won't say who they were, but they're all talented people as well.
now I'm curious. Yeah.
No, we know who they were.
Yeah.
You might have a sense for them. What did you guys think of this book? You flipped through it. Was there anything in it that surprised you? Anything that comes to mind that stuck out? Not necessarily about yourselves, who are both in the book, but just in general. What were some of the main takeaways when you went through this bad boy here? Meg?
Mostly that we are completely unoriginal, and Charlie Hill did everything we did but better. But he just didn't have the exposure and money. But he was sitting there making movies and doing all this. Like he was, doing sketch shows on a level that we are still sort of only dreaming of, like the late night stuff and the TV show stuff that he did. Like he was doing it, he just didn't have the same exposure. It's just the wrong time. I think actually often now. I thought this before, but now, especially after having read the book, about like if he was doing his stuff just at the same time as us, I think he would have blown us out of the water for everything. He's just he's revolutionary that way, and it's good that the book is out, like shining such a light on him, because he's definitely an inspiration to all of us. But that's sort of to be expected with natives. And you look at the only native names in comedy, really, Charlie Hill's the only guy that really comes up steadily. And so like to see the amount of work that he did, and that at the time it was like such a hit, and then it sort of didn't have the same sort of like staying power as like he should be in the pantheon of somebody like Richard Pryor or whatever. And it's just that it's not there in the same, unless you're into comedy, or unless you're into especially native comedy, like that it's not in the same breath in a widespread sort of way, is a shame. And so like seeing all of that story laid out was really, really cool. Love that.
Yeah. And for anybody watching, you should just qualify who Charlie Hill was. And he was an Oneida stand-up who emerged in the 1970s, did the Comedy Store, did the Richard Pryor Show in 1977. And from there, his career just took off. He did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in 78, Merv Griffin Show in the early 80s, Late Night with David Letterman in 85, and worked steadily throughout the 1980s comedy club boom. And really there was a couple other dudes, but he really was sort of the Native American representative in comedy and in stand-up. And like you say, probably a little bit ahead of his time. And I always found it strange that, people always like to celebrate firsts, the first person to do this, the first person to do that. Certainly in, African-American cultures, same thing, you celebrate the firsts. And yet they just did a Comedy Store documentary that was on Showtime. They didn't mention Charlie Hill. It seemed like a significant thing that he was the first sort of native voice in modern stand-up comedy. What about you, Bobby? What do you think of that? And what were some of the takeaways from the book that you had?
I mean, I think I know this guy personally, and I always hear about it, but it was really cool to actually see what you had to say about John Roberts, or what he had to say about himself, really, and what he's doing. And it just really illustrates kind of the general, and this goes for like, I think, native comedy as a whole for what it is, the non-traditional route to pursuing it. Because I mean, like, there's people all across this country that if they want to do stand-up, they've got to drive like an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to like the nearest place that does one open mic maybe like a month. And like what Mig was saying, if Charlie Hill had YouTube or could sit on his toilet next to his child and talk to an untold number of audience members, then there's no telling what he could have achieved. Not saying that he didn't achieve nothing. I mean, like, the 1491s don't exist without the guy and without his work and his ability to tell the truth in such a way that was so I guess harsh but also hilarious. He's like the quintessential old Indian guy.
And what do you think about what kind of route would you guys have had? Do you think you guys had a unconventional trajectory in the sense that the first things you did together were for YouTube, basically, right? As opposed to coming together and doing shows on stage initially. You did YouTube videos first as the 1491s and then took it to the stage, as opposed to maybe the more traditional route of doing it on the stage and then going on TV like a lot of sketch troupes did in the past. Do you think you guys, what if YouTube didn't exist? Do you think the 1491s would still have come together and done something?
No. No way. Kidding me?
Yeah, no,
we do. Because we'd all be dead or in jail. No,
that's the one. Yeah. It was, we hit it at a strange time. I mean, we were all like artists and writers and people just trying to create, and YouTube was a space for us all to come together and create. I don't know, it's hard to say whether or not we would have come together in any kind of other way to like make any kind of collective, but for us it was, what was sort of refreshing about it was that it was definitely, we started out a little bit in response to the idea that we're not telling the kind of stories or making the kind of content that we wanted to be making necessarily. I know that was definitely true for me, and I think for Sterling a little bit as well. Like any sort of like writing assignments that were coming our way were usually pretty dark and a little messed up and sort of skewed towards a poverty porn kind of lens. And so to be able to like get together and just like do some silly stuff, but it also came out of wanting to be like, the first one we did is the New Moon Wolfpack auditions, which is just a silly concept, but it was very much reactionary. Right after that, we started going like, well, let's not react to anything. Let's just like make stuff. And, there were a couple of like, things that were a little bit more in sort of a reactive kind of space. But for the most part, we were always just proactive and like wanting to sort of like do our own thing, sort of change, not necessarily, it wasn't always like, oh, let's change the narrative, but it was just like, let's just make ourselves laugh, because that's what we're like missing right now in sort of like the content creation world. And the fact that we had no like oversight, no producers, we weren't trying to do anything in any kind of like normal route. We weren't going to like TV stations or or to studios or networks or anything, like trying to get anything done. We're just like making stuff ourselves. Was and is it's a different way to do things. That also meant we couldn't do anything on the scale that we wanted to, but we could definitely do things and make ourselves laugh. So
when you guys started making comedy videos, how quickly was it apparent that not only you were generating an audience, but like an indigenous audience? How quickly did you realize that you were hitting a nerve?
For me, I was working, teaching a 2-week poetry class at a high school at the St. Francis Indian School in South Dakota, the Sichangu Nation. And I didn't really know, like, you didn't have YouTubes on phones yet. And I remember I got there on one day, and then I got a text from, it was probably Sterling, who was like, "Hey, I'm gonna release that video tomorrow." I was like, "Cool, maybe I'll be able to watch it on one of these computers here." The next day, I like by lunchtime at that school, one of the teachers had come up to me and was like, "Hey, I saw you on a video." I was like, "Oh yeah, did you see? Was it the Wolfpack one?" He goes, "Fuck man, that shit was funny as hell." And then I went back to teach one of the classes, and one of the kids was like, "I have a question. I saw you on YouTube." I was like, "Shit, man, I haven't even seen the video." And one of the kids was like, "Oh, well, let's go look at it." But he like broke into the teacher computer with their kid ways and fucking showed me the video. And seriously, like the end of the week, everybody that I was talking to, like everywhere I went on that res, people were like, "Hey, fucking Wolfpack." And I knew that shit was something special about that. You know, I was like, "God damn, like this is pretty fucking cool." Like all the Indians here seen it. And then I go back into white man land, and like, you know, I'm still getting beat up by the cops. So
Yeah. So, and for people who haven't seen that first video, it's a parody of the Twilight movies and the fact that I never saw the Twilight movies, but I get the gist. There's a bunch of
you're missing out.
Americans.
They're beautiful.
Sort of whatever. What about when you guys then took it, what you do, to the stage? Did you have an audience? Were you booked because of the video? Did people show up who knew you from YouTube sketch comedy? What do you remember? And what was the dynamic like when you took it to the stage? Was it a difficult transition?
No, I don't think it was difficult to transition. I mean, like we all like being goofy, and it helped. Like Migizi and Dallas are brothers. They grew up together being stupid. And you know, I've smoked a lot of weed and taken a lot of hallucinogens in my life, so I can just be goofy with anybody. So like this is kind of one of the things I was talking about with the non-traditional trajectory, is like we got asked by Indian organizations who were doing various conferences to just come out and perform for like their dinners. So it was just like an optional thing for them. And we ended up in the hearts and minds of all these like professional Indians from all these different social service organizations. Like our first show outside of Minnesota was unfortunately negotiated by Dallas Goldtooth. He called up super excited. He's like, "I got us a gig in Seattle." I was like, "Holy shit, dude, I always wanted to go to Seattle." I was so excited. And he goes, "Yeah, man, it's at the Tulalip Casino." I was like, "Wow, that sounds so exotic. I can't wait to meet those other Indians." And I said, "So, well, what's the deal? How does it work?" And he goes, "Well, we each get $500, but we got to get our flights out there, and we got to book our own hotels." And I'm like, "I ain't doing this fucking show. What are you talking about? I get $500. I don't got $500 right now to get out there. You know, I'm gonna wait, go out there, do a show on, you know, out of my anyway." It was terrible. And I was like, "Ask for more." So he goes, "Okay, I guess I'll ask him for more." But to be honest, like this was already the second time I had asked him for for money. So I think we got like $1,000, and then they were nice enough to give us our own hotels. But yeah, it was no, wait, never mind. They didn't give us hotels.
I was like, we stayed at my friend's house.
Yeah.
We stayed on the damn couch at your friend's house.
Yeah.
Was it not at a casino that is part hotel?
No, I mean, it was Tulalip. Yeah, no. It was Tulalip was like one of the sponsors of the thing in the end, but we ended up like it was not like a part of the thing. It was like it was just a conference, and so we were in some random room. Like,
yeah,
beautiful.
I always laugh about it because Patton Oswalt has a bit about having like the first show that he ever did where it was like an obscene amount of money that he was like, I can't believe, like he felt bad that they were paying him so much. It was Tulalip Resort and Casino that he was talking about.
Yep.
That is hilarious. Oh man. So when you guys do a live gig, do you project videos? Do you come up with material that's specific to do on the stage that you could not do in a YouTube video? Like, what's the difference between what people see on YouTube, the 1491's YouTube channel, which I think is 1491S, right? The YouTube channel. If people want to
Sure.
find it, and there's tons of great stuff on it. But when you do a live show, is it different than, do you have to come up with different material that would work with a live audience as opposed to in a YouTube video?
We try to, yeah. We try, like, one of the things about, we've always been very conscious, I think, about trying to make our presence worth it for the people that are bringing us out. So we don't just like, go and play our videos and then stand off to the side or whatever. Like we'll start off with like a little introduction, and then we'll do like a video, come back, do a video sketch, and sort of that's the format. And the sketches are always things that we try to discourage. I mean, it was sort of impossible because everybody's got, cameras in their pocket, but try to discourage like recording too much, because we like, for when we go someplace and do something live, that people haven't seen it before, that we're not just rehashing like our videos and stuff. We're trying to like make something new. And oftentimes we'll curtail to the audience that we're a part of a little bit. Like we'll get to, especially in Native communities, we'll get to Indian communities and be like, what are your dirty words? Where's your ruggedest village or whatever? Who's your like, yeah. And so then we'll layer that in. So, we'll, in our intro, sometimes we might, if we're being like real cheesy and like real chiefy about it, we'll say that we got like an Indian name, and then we'll use like the word for penis or whatever, wherever they're at. So, stuff like that. But like, there, especially when we were like really like, we went by like college schedules oftentimes, because there were also student groups that would bring us out to different universities and stuff, like Native student groups. And so what we would often try to do is, while we were there, we would not only like hang out in the community, whether it's the college or like whether it's different Indian communities, but we'd also do what we could to just like freshen it up for ourselves, so we didn't get stale, and we just like come up with new sketches on the spot and try and roll out. And if they worked, they worked, and if they didn't, they didn't. But we learned that pretty early on, I think, once we started really actually like traveling a lot, going like, man, we can't just do the same thing over and over again. Like we had one prop at one point, which was a giant tree costume that Bobby would climb in. And by the time we were done using that thing, like by the time we were done, that thing had no leaves on it, and it just looked like a giant, just like a walking turd. Yeah. So we tried to make it as sort of specific and fresh as we could every time we would go to some place. Oftentimes that was exhausting though, because that was the only time, since we're all over the country, located in various parts of the country. I was in Montana for a lot of years. Bobby is in Arizona, and two of our dudes are in Oklahoma, and Dallas is wherever he is, somewhere in the Midwest. And that was often the only time that we could create our own video content as well. And so we would break new sketches or whatever for the show during the day, do our show, and even though we would all be exhausted trying to go to sleep, we would create new video content wherever we were. So I think there's one in particular that was sort of like, that's funny. You could see, you can hear the raspiness in my voice of this like old white ghostesses video that we made. I'm just walking around with a cell phone, like a found footage type horror flick, and you can hear my voice just like giving out, like ready to just be done. But it's because we'd been making content all day at the same time as like being in a blizzard, walking around with and hanging out with all these student groups. And that was sort of the schedule though. We tried to like give as much as we could while we were on the road. So
that was Vassar, by the way.
Vassar. Yeah, Vassar College.
I write in the book about your guys' show, Between Two Knees. When I talk about it or am asked about it, I always refer to it as a sketch comedy show instead of a play. I know Oregon Shakespeare Festival hired you guys to write a play, and it's called a play, but to me, it's still like, to call it a play almost diminishes what the 1491s do, because plays are usually serious, and often it is that poverty porn kind of thing. So I rather describe it as sketch comedy, so people understand on the outset that it's comedy. I was so delighted that I got to see it, not just because it was a great show, but shortly after that, the pandemic happened and things shut down altogether. So I'm so glad I went and saw it when I had the chance. Great show. When the pandemic ends, if ever, I hope people will go out and see Between Two Knees wherever it plays next. How would you describe the show that you guys wrote, which really is sort of like the magna opus of the 1491s thus far. Between
God, oh yeah, thus far is good. I was like, God, I hope not. If this is where we peaked,
Thus far.
just sad.
Thus far.
oh, but thus far, it was a big deal, right? Like that was really seemed like a huge deal when I went just to see the set design and the people involved and full houses every night. It seemed it was just like it was a big deal, was it not?
Oh, totally. Well, to be totally frank, that had nothing to do with us. That was all the other people involved.
But it was
we just wrote the thing. Yeah, no, it was there was I'd been kicking around the idea of like a historical sort of very much based on the Mel Brooks's History of the World Part 1 with like a native bent to it, and that is too expansive. That was too like, but we found it's funny that you call it a sketch. I mean, it is in some ways because it has that sensibility that we have, like the live sketch stuff, but at the same time it definitely has like an emotional through line. Like I'm surprised every time, like I went up and watched it in Oregon maybe 3 or 4 times outside of like previews and stuff. Like I just try to sneak up and go out there and watch it, and like end of the first act I cried every time. I knew what was coming. We wrote the thing, but like it always sort of caught me off guard how actually emotional it was, because it's not our typical fare. It's more indicative, I think, of our overall work, like with our represent videos and stuff that we have on the 1491's channel. It's more representative of that than it is like any one sketch or our live sketch shows that we would do ourselves. It's more indicative of the things that we actually care about. There's a lot more heart and emotion put behind it. So
yeah.
We'll see if I can real quick. Yeah. Hey.
Oh, lovely.
That's what I get to stare at. Stare at my naked brother.
Yeah, no, it was a great show. I understand what you're saying. It had a real dramatic arc to it, but also hilarious throughout. This joke-driven narrative. The one joke, I don't know why it stuck with me so much. I guess because it was the most. I've heard you guys talk about the influence of Mel Brooks and the influence of movies like Naked Gun and Hot Shots and that school of comedy. There's one joke in Between Two Knees towards the end that seems straight out of like a Naked Gun movie, where it's like a bunch of AIM members, the Wounded Knee siege of 1973 is happening, and somebody says something to the effect of "get the gun" or "get the guns," and they go to a table and they lift up this table, and the bottom of the table are like hundreds of guns, just armaments, and then it goes back down. It's a real quick joke, a visual gag that killed. Although I think when I saw it, only one half of the theater could actually see the joke, and so half the theater was laughing gloriously, while half the theater was left in the dark. But that to me felt very Naked Gunnish, and I just loved those little details. We're talking about bleak subject matter, and yet there's these really, really funny, great sort of visual gags. You guys must have just been totally thrilled with the response that Between Two Knees received, I imagine.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah! Like there was one of the reviews. What did they say? I didn't pay for money on purpose to see this mess, or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, that was one of my favorites. One of my favorites is the idea that one person walked out and his wife stayed in.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that was good. It was. What's funny is it's not like mixed. I mean, it was polarizing. Like anybody that didn't like it, you didn't just like didn't like it a little bit. Like you hated it and walked out and were really mad at OSF for putting this on. They're like, you went from Shakespeare to this.
Yeah.
And
polarizing, but it wasn't like half the audience walked out. It was like 2 or 3 people maybe walked out. Not.
Yeah. I mean, over the course of like 2 or 3 people, I think over the course of a week, maybe.
Yeah.
We would have there are tallies of like a walkout tally.
Well, this is the polarizing thing though, is that like we would also get emails, and OSF would get emails as well of people that were like that like basically just thanking us for creating this work and for being honest and for having our humor there. And people would tell us about those emotional moments that made us cry. And it felt like we had done kind of the right thing, especially when it was other Indians writing to us, telling us that we'd done a good job,
Yeah, well, I think
so. No, not everybody walked out.
No, well, very few walked out, but it was fun. It is funny to hear about the people that were completely outraged.
Yeah,
was-
I
I
think
was
you
confused
know. I
what-
think
Sorry, go
that's
ahead.
one of the things. That's one of the things about us that's I think is always people can't quite wrap their heads around is that we are absolutely irreverent. Like we hold nothing, literally, like very little sacred, like actually sacred. But we're also deadly serious about the stuff that we do. So at the beginning of the play, we talk about like, hey, there's a white guilt can, a Folgers can passed around. And we're like, if you're feeling really guilty, like if you're still feeling guilty after this play, you can, you can donate some money here or whatever. And but the thing about that is that we didn't just pocket that. We used the money to send to Chimawa boarding school for kids that were interested in the arts, and it ended up being a little over 20 grand. So like,
Wow.
I think people, thank you, white guilt. Thank you, illusion of white guilt that doesn't actually exist. So yeah, I think that's the thing about us is I think people are often astonished about. They think that we're like these. This has been my experience when we go to different communities. People will think we're either like very like serious about the stuff we make. And you're like, oh, you're always saying such good things, and this is what I'm telling my class when I'm teaching your videos in class. And we're like, it's a dick joke, man. So I think they're either like they're confused about how actually like deep and like and serious we try to be, mixed with the idea of like how absolutely irreverent and don't care
You're
that
saying
we can be.
there's people who use your videos. What kind of class would somebody present a 1491's video? It sounds to me like art critics, who read into the secret meaning of the movie, and the filmmaker is like, what are you talking about? There was no intended inherent meaning. But who is using your videos to teach, and what is it that they're
Anytime you're talking about like colonial studies and deconstructing colonialism, and especially with talking like native studies type things, um you know I don't know that it's beyond me. I wouldn't use it except as a tool on how not to be.
yeah.
um,
Oh, that's interesting.
Bobby liked that. Bobby liked that.
How not to be.
Yeah, exactly, he knows.
Now,
But yeah,
before the pandemic, there were plans to take Between Two Knees, the 1491 sketch comedy play, and do it elsewhere or have it continue. I mean, it's a scripted show. You could conceive of other people doing it elsewhere. I mean, I imagine you want to keep the same cast together. Hypothetically, I guess you could have a different cast do it, but
yeah, as much as possible. That play doesn't really exist without Justin Gauthier, our guy who plays Larry, who carries the thing on his back, and he rocked it out for however it was, over 100 performances over the course of 6 months or whatever. Just killed it. But that's also for everybody. I could say that about anybody in the play as well. Like I just can't see it without Rachel Crowell like kicking ass as the sort of our generic bad white person. For every role there's Rachel there just like being amazing. So like I think there's it as much it's gonna move on. I don't know how much I'm gonna say about where it's gonna go next, but it's gonna move on, and it's gonna have its next life. We're doing a couple little rewrites here and there, fiddling with some stuff that we, in the same way that we did with our sketches, trying to find something that pops a little bit funnier and all of that. And I think as much as we can retain the same team going forward.
No, not that.
Oh, Bobby says no.
No.
Bobby doesn't want to do that.
No. We're not doing that. No.
No, yeah. As much of the same team as we can keep, we're going to.
yeah,
You can fuck with that up.
Well, it was such a great show, and I hesitate to say the word unfortunately, because I don't mean to diss the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, but unfortunately the show was in rural Oregon, so it was very hard to convince people to come from Los Angeles or New York and say, go see this play. I mean, that's what I told people.
I don't know, man. I don't know. That thing sold out every damn performance, so it wasn't that hard. There were a lot of people
that play is what got me my job on Rutherford Falls.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Tell me about that. How did that happen?
Sierra freaking flew out from LA to go see it. Said she loved it, and I was fortunate enough to be there through the entire process of
pre-production
rehearsals. Yeah, pre-production basically. Just doing the on-site rewrites based on like the conversations that we had in the rehearsals and stuff like that. And so I really in a lot of ways felt like that piece was my baby. Also, my wife was pregnant at the time, so the real baby was on her way here. Yeah, I'm talking about you. She's trying to pour some lean over here. Anyways, but we talked about it, and then I sent her. She asked me if I'd send her a writing sample that wasn't Between Two Knees, and I did, and then I got the job.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome. I will tell you this too, like I didn't go to college or anything like that. And after the experience of being part of that production, I was so like, I need to keep doing this. Like that was so much fun and it was so crazy, just like talking about all of these philosophies and indigeneity and comedy in such like an intellectual way for like a solid month and a half every single damn day. And man, I was thirsty for more of that. So I applied to the master's program where Migizi got his MFA in screenwriting. And I was like, hey, just so you guys know, I've never been to college before. Don't know how this works, but I hear you're giving out master's degrees for this stuff. And this is why you should let me into the program. Number one, you've had me as a guest lecturer at least 3 times. Number 2, I have a giant mural that you guys paid for, painted outside on your campus. And number 3, you guys teach my videos in your damn classes. Now give me a master's. They said no.
They said no. Yeah.
They said no.
Gotta go to school for that.
You yelled at them and everything, and they still said no?
Well, it was all caps. So it was all email. It was via email.
Not spell check, just
yeah, no punctuation whatsoever. Just
I can relate to that. People ask me if I teach, and I don't think I qualify. I'm pretty sure you need a diploma of some kind in order to teach. But
overrated.
Hey, hooray for
wasted your life.
No education.
It was like a year and a half of my life. I think I'm all right.
Yeah, that's true. You got it back.
Somebody has sent in a joke question. They want to know, would the 1491s ever consider making an OnlyFans, but instead of taking clothes off, you put more and more clothes on?
I see that. That's Tommy P. That's Tommy Pico.
Tommy Pico.
Tommy Pico thinks he's cute.
I think he's funny.
My answer is so like the 1491s, there's 5 of us and we all do a lot of individual things within our own careers, and I do have an OnlyFans, though it is just pictures of me fully clothed eating sandwiches, and I call it Only Sam's. You're welcome to subscribe, tip me, all that. All the money is for college. Oh, boo! Oh, you don't like sandwiches?
Yeah, Tommy Pico says,
fuck you, Tommy.
The anti-sandwich lobby has spoken here.
Probably into
Speaking of
raps.
Sandwiches. This makes no sense. Reminding people we're talking about, we have a little real estate problem. The unheralded story of Native Americans in comedy. Again, the publisher's subtitle with a sexy little Steve Martin blurb.
Who's that?
What do you guys think? I want to ask you about some of the other folks that are in here. Williams and Reed. Did you know who they were?
No.
I heard of them when I was in, I don't know, middle school or something. I'd never seen anything of theirs before we started doing our thing. So
one of the things I found interesting when I was researching this book is just, I never answer the question if somebody poses it to me, like, what's native comedy? And, I'll just say, well, it's a native person doing comedy. That's what it is. But in the 80s, it seems like, mainstream comedy, club comedy, there's that cliche of the guy with the rolled up sleeves or the shoulder pads doing jokes about airline food. In the 80s and 90s, a lot of native comedy also had its own sort of subsection of cliches, whether it was through Don Burnstick or Williams and Ree, or even some of the independent movies. The jokes about fry bread and res dogs and res cars and snagging. There seemed to be like I don't know if it's a style, but a component of comedy that was very much of its era, of the 80s and 90s. Do you guys find that at all when you look back at some of that old stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, those are uncle jokes.
Yeah.
Uncle jokes.
Yeah, uncle
Yeah,
jokes.
they're uncle jokes. White people have
Mm.
dad jokes, but we don't have dads, so we have uncle jokes.
Yeah, pretty much. Those were. It's funny. I think growing up, the stuff I always watched was, it was like Marx Brothers, and there's a lot of brothers, Marx Brothers and Zucker Brothers, and yeah, and like Mel Brooks and all that stuff, and Don Bernstick was not on my cable box, and we didn't have the internet, so it wasn't something that I was really aware of, and I had heard of the Indian and the white guy or whatever, and but I'd never seen any of that. I think probably the first like sort of not even mainstream. The thing you're talking about is probably Smoke Signals. In terms of like in terms of representation. Well, yeah, and there's but growing up, in Minnesota, the thing I did have, like Charlie Hill did, Herald of Orange and all that stuff, and and these things are like they feel more localized, and so that I had some exposure to, and but other stuff, you start going north of the border. Like I had heard of the TV show North of 60, but you start getting to Canada, and it was. But other than that, like I had no real idea about what people were creating, except for those like splashy, standout things. So like Dance Me Outside, I had heard of, and Smoke Signals, I had seen and heard of, and all of that. But it was like growing up, it was just before the internet, so it wasn't really until then that I had a lot of exposure to all that stuff. And I don't know. I think I read Lone Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven by Sherman Alexie, and I was like, okay. And then I went back to like my Preacher comics or whatever it was. But there was nothing. It wasn't as engaging. It didn't necessarily speak exactly to my thing, and it felt. I don't know. It just wasn't my. I guess just wasn't my thing.
Yeah, Dance Me Outside. I remember seeing Dance Me Outside when it first came out in the 90s. It was like a big indie movie that I grew up in Canada. I don't remember if it's good though. Like I haven't revisited it since. I remember loving it at the time, but I don't know. I think it's made by a white guy, if I'm not mistaken.
I keep hearing that, and I do not care. Like a lot of
you sure hope so, don't you? You sure hope so, huh, Kliph?
Yeah.
Well,
only a white guy can really tell the story.
Well, I mean, generally speaking, when a white guy makes something about Native people in the 1990s, the results may or may not be so hot.
Here's what I know is that Adam Beach in there, sexy as hell. Michael Gray Eyes, sexy as hell.
Adam Beach,
Gray Eyes. Tall drink of water.
I didn't even realize that. I saw it when I was a kid.
Come on now. Yeah, so that I remember that, and it was one of the first times I heard "Come and Get Your Love" in a mainstream movie too. So there's all those little things. But like our stuff came out of just like we're sort of got. I have a story that's not like incredibly flattering probably to certain people involved, but like I tried like as a teenager, went up to like I got a chance to go to the Sundance Film Festival and went up to Chris Eyre, who's hanging out in a corner, and I was like, yo, what's up, man? Like like love to talk to you, like I'm a native dude and like native kid, and I'd love to see like, and he's like, yeah, all right, and then like walked off. Probably he obviously wouldn't remember it, maybe it was a bad night or whatever, but I was just like, well, that door's closed. Cool. So like our thing has always been at least as much as we possibly can, and with our like we try to keep doors open, and especially with ourselves, like we understand the sort of social responsibility that we have to doing what we do, which is where sort of the represent videos came from that are on the 1491's channel. A lot of that we started to recognize that if there were people like us that had an opportunity to see us on like a larger platform, like something global like YouTube, and then suddenly we're in their community, like we're not going to deny access to ourselves to be like nah kid, like or whatever, like we'll just be like tell us what you're interested in, and we made videos in a lot of those communities because of that, for that reason, to sort of like, I think because we'd all, as much as we might respect or admire those things that had come out before us, they weren't necessarily accessible to us. And I think like the accessibility is important, especially when you're as you said, you're like the first, or like whatever, like we made a lot of lot of videos, and we were, you know, we could probably point back and say we were the first to do certain things, but like
Right.
that, we're also like, well, don't make us special. We better keep on doing it, or somebody else is going to just, you know, jump on.
I can't remember if it was Sierra or Ryan McMahon or maybe both. When I spoke to them, they mentioned that when they started, there was a different vibe in which there was sort of almost a competitive atmosphere. Whereas if you were native and in show business, there was this feeling like there was only room for one person, and people didn't want to help each other necessarily. This is a generalization. And Sierra said that now it feels different, that there's more of a supportive community, that if you're in show business and I'm in show business, we're both native, let's come together and kind of help each other out or share notes. Whereas maybe in the 90s, it was more like there's only room for one, and there was a sort of competitive edge. Do you feel that that might be accurate? Or
Probably, unless you're too light-skinned or too brown-skinned, then there are people that'll try to take you down online with their little lists. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, anybody that's real, that's actually creating stuff, tries to be as inclusive and bring people in as possible.
yeah.
So, but you know, it's that those who can do and those who can't make lists. So
Yeah.
Oh,
or they write books.
fired.
Or they write books.
They write books.
Or they write books.
Oh,
Real estate.
poor
Oh,
thing.
cute.
Oh,
sad.
it's your little book
Just
there.
he's just
geez.
almost funny guy. No, you-
Somebody has a question and they asked me what inspired me to write this book, and this is my opportunity to tell you all that I have what they call white savior complex. So that's what it's.
Yeah,
I wrote
That's actually why I agreed to talk to you.
we needed to be saved. That's true.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome.
I have to tell you, man, you gave in the book, you have one of the most accurate descriptions I've ever seen of myself. That
Really?
I just have to say. Yeah. Hanging out in the back while Bobby talks to all of the people and going like, I can't talk to these people, is probably the most accurate description of me that I've ever seen.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I think
fun.
I was just quoting something that you said to me. I remember that day showing up opening night, right? Or opening afternoon, or I can't remember.
Yeah.
It was daytime.
Yeah,
Huge crowd in front of the theater. You were up against the wall, hanging out with your lady, and Bobby was like carrying 5 conversations at the same time, just circles of people coming up to you. You were talking to somebody and it was like, hey, how are you? Hey, and it was like this constant, like, just wall of people. But that was such an exciting day to sort of witness. And having talked to you guys before, I knew that you were, this thing took, how long did it take to do Between Two Knees? Like from the day that you were hired to do it till the first performance, it was a really long process, right?
Years, yeah, it could have been longer. They actually, what's funny is that I think knowing that we're Indian men and knowing that we would fall short of our goal, they set us up for production when we were only like 40% of the way done with our script. And then we were like, oh, we got to finish this thing. And then of course we finished that last like 40-50% about a week before we went.
Oh, really? Wow.
So, yeah. But yeah, no, we had a lot of the concept down, and we saw a lot of plays, which was the other thing. We needed to familiarize ourselves with the language of the theater, and just see as much as we could. So we spent a lot of time in Oregon going to plays and basically causing a riot wherever we went, in like wrestling each other in different venues around Ashland, Oregon, and writing like at night, or writing during whenever we could, or whenever we got inspired together. But that process took, I want to say, like 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah, it was definitely like 2 years, just getting together whenever we could, right?
yeah, totally. We, you know, and we would, bless them, we Ashland, like the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, kept bringing us back to hang out and get stuff done. And every time we did, we would make pretty good progress. But I think it was them being like, look, what you have in terms of, we had an outline, and we had about, we have 40-50% of it like actually like written, meaning we had about 40 good pages, and we probably had like 100 pages, but only 40 of them were good. And they were like, this is good enough for us to go into production. Like, let's get this moving. And so that's why that it necessitated that Bobby had to be there for the last bit of production. I was in a writer's room for a show called Barskins. And so all of us were in Sterling was doing this. He had a bunch of work going on. So all of us were like, had our things going on. And Bobby was,
oh my God,
had a pregnant wife that he was really eager to not be next to. So
to leave. To abandon,
like our fathers
with our
before us. He's
unborn
like,
child.
this is where I start another family somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's what you're gonna see. That's what you're gonna see
Is
in
it
like,
hot in here?
10, 15 years. There's gonna be a slew of teenagers in Ashland, Oregon that just tattoos on their
They've
neck.
all got this. They're of every ethnicity.
All right, we have
No,
another.
man, it was crazy, man. I just want to say, Ashland, Oregon, fucking Oregon Shakespeare Festival were so insanely supportive of us from the get go. You know, just like just no pressure. Just like, here's a creative space. Here's the money to make what you want to make.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and they did an
Phenomenal.
incredible job. You guys did an incredible job. It was an incredible show. Between Two Knees, for the people watching, keep an eye open for whenever it resurfaces in the future, post-pandemic. We have another question. This is the type of question I can't answer, and I don't know if you guys like these types of questions. I got a feeling maybe you don't.
Guess we'll find out, huh?
Brian Canady asks, are there any particular attitudes or types of jokes that you would think of as uniquely Native American?
Were you a racist or something? Ask a question like that.
Actually, I'm gonna say yeah, because there are two things, right? There's this sort of like wide swath of like Native American, which is is a group of over 500 independent nations that have all been treated in some way similarly by the U.S. government. And so there are similarities in relation to the way natives react to the U.S. Now, I would say there's not a wide swath that goes from one nation to the next, that you can't, that every nation is unique and individual. So oftentimes what happens is a joke that'll work widespread across native country will often be something that is more reactive than I think you would want comedy to be, because it's reactive to the way that natives as a whole deal with the US government or white people or whatever, like, society at large. So those things are, if there's something that's sort of particular or unique, it's about like, generally colonization, that stuff, and our shared experiences with colonization and over the course of like, hundreds of years. But once you start getting a little bit more micro with it, then no, there's not one thing that's unique to any particular nation or tribe or whatever, however you classify themselves.
Yeah.
So there you go.
All right, you got that, Brian Canady? Is that good enough?
Yeah.
You're racist.
Put that in your peace pipe and smoke it.
Let's see, what else can we talk about? Can you tell me anything more about Reservation Dogs, what the premise is of the show? Either of you?
Sure. Yeah, we could. Not gonna.
We could, but will we? Yeah, no. Fucking watch it.
Yeah. No, it's about
This is Indian land. Go watch it.
This is Indian. Except where it's not, because then this is particularly this tribe's land or whatever. I don't know. Trying to be right about it.
Oh,
but
right,
no, yeah. So no, the premise is about 4 native youths and their, I don't know, trials, tribulations, struggles, and yearning for a better life while still living within the place that they're from.
And
it's so funny, and it's hilarious.
So funny. Here's the thing, like I've thought this consciously a couple of times over the course of helping to write this thing, is that there's nothing really like it yet on TV. So it's hard to it's hard to find comps.
No analogy. Yeah.
You're just, there's nothing that translates. But in the way that, Atlanta has a unique vision. I hate doing that because it's nothing like this. It's nothing like Atlanta.
I know,
is the other thing, But like in the way that it has a unique vision, Reservation Dogs has a unique vision.
It's Forrest Gump meets Pulp Fiction.
Oh, Lordy Lord.
From the producers of Jojo Rabbit comes
Gump Fiction. The Pulp Gump. So yeah, wow, what a weird pull. They competed against each other in the Academy Awards.
They did.
Yeah. So anyway,
nerds.
Yeah. On all the awards, really. I'm gonna stop doing that.
Oh my God! Is there another question?
Yeah. Can we move on?
All right. Let's see. I think
I will get lost. I'll tumble down a Jojo rabbit hole.
Brian Canady says, "Awesome, thanks." I think he's thanking you for calling him a racist. He's seen the errors of his ways, I guess.
Anytime. If he feels free, Feel free to give your land.
Charlie Hill was the first and last indigenous comedian to appear on The Tonight Show. The 1491s, or at least three of you, appeared on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. I don't know if that's a thing that you're sick and tired of talking about, but people are very intrigued by that. Since that segment aired, I guess in 2013, Washington has finally changed the name of their football team. When you guys appeared on The Daily Show, Jon Stewart was still the host. Segment was with Jason Jones, and it was about racist football mascots. So in a way, I guess you guys were the second indigenous comedians to appear on late night TV in that sense, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll take number two. Shit.
Yeah. It's all right.
I don't really, I'm trying to fish for a question here. What do you guys remember in general sense? What do you remember about that experience? Did that seem like a big deal at the time when you guys did that show in 2013? Now we're in a year where there are two different native themed comedies coming out on network television. When you guys, or not network television, but television, American television. When you guys did that Daily Show appearance, native representation was still few and far between in TV and comedy.
Yeah.
It was.
It was. The thing is, it was not funny is the problem. It ended up being a joke that didn't work because they, I think they were going to try and push us together with these sort of like fanatics and like let us do our thing. But we also, among our group, we had very fanatics to the anti-mascot thing, whereas we're incredibly irreverent people and we would have just been happy to make jokes and make fun of these fans. A real discourse and conversation got started and it got really heated, and it's not funny at all. It just ended up being like, so Jason Jones was doing this whole bit where he's going to sit back like he's watching a football game, like eating chicken wings. And I think at one point I saw him just go, like, put it down.
This isn't working.
This clearly isn't working.
That white lady just called the cops.
And it was one of those weird, it was a very rare segment where Jon Stewart had to do like a preamble to it before he rolled it because we'd been accused of, I don't know, making a white lady cry. He's like, look, we didn't intentionally make this white lady cry. And they're like, all right, yeah, which is fair and true. But yeah, so it was a pretty intense thing that should have been a lot funnier than it was. But there, a couple of nice moments in it. And then, Redskins changed the name many years later. So I'm going to say we were.
Yeah, we did it. We did it.
Totally effective.
Yeah.
Very slow 7-year snowball effect. It took 7 years to snowball to reach the bottom of the hill. Well, let's see here. I think we're almost, okay. So one last person has a question here.
Better be good.
I don't know if it's for me or for you or for who.
Probably you.
I don't think
we
it's
didn't write the book.
It says, do you have any, well, this is good, maybe a good question for Bobby, who, if people don't know, is a brilliant visual artist. It says, do you have any favorite cartoons or cartoonists? Are you open to doing that type of media? I don't know who they're asking, but how about just in general? Who are some of your favorite visual artists or artists, maybe indigenous artists, that you think people should be aware of right now? And if people don't know, you can follow Bobby Wilson on Instagram and see some of the amazing artwork that you create. But who are some of your favorite visual artists or cartoons?
I mean, Bobby Wilson's the only person I point people to, so I'm just going to leave that to him.
At sign Bobby Dews. I'm looking at my wall right now, and there's a lot of really great Micah Werewolf. He goes by on Instagram. He's a native painter from Oklahoma.
Oh, cool.
He calls this one white coworker number 2.
I
hung that up. Yeah, I know. It just looks exactly like Ryan Redcliffe as well. Oh, this chick right here, dude. Heidi Brando. She's freaking beast.
Yeah, Heidi's
super
awesome.
Badass visual artist. Yeah, that's Crystal Whirl right there. That's Ian Kuali'i. Super awesome work. I did that one. That's a poster from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. One of my favorite movies as a kid. Little engine that could. I don't know. there's some good artists out there. You know what? You go fucking do the work. They're all on Instagram. You kidding me? Just go onto my Instagram, look at my list of people that I am following, and you'll see just like the best indigenous artists on planet Earth of our time right now. Jamie Akuma, holy shit.
At Bobby Dews, BOBBYDUES on Instagram. Also should mention the cover of this book was designed by Buffalo Nickel Creative. Ryan Redcorn, also a member of the 1491s. Thank you for this.
Boo, boo, boo. Felt good to do.
What
The
about
only
you?
artists I got on my walls? I only got Bobby on my wall. Bobby and Melissa Cody. Every time.
How do people keep abreast of what you were doing, Mig? Is there social media that you want to direct people to?
Just my Twitter. Other than that, like my Instagram is relatively private, so is my Facebooks and stuff. But you can find me on the Twitters, making random jokes. Other than that, trades.
Yeah.
In answer to the question, Bobby and I actually tried to do a comic book thing a while back, and it may be something that comes up in the world. We got about as far as a title page, but
yeah.
But it's like it's something that's always been. I love comics. Bobby loves comics, so like it's something that it may be still in the future. We don't know, but for right now.
What was the premise?
A bunch of Indian vampire hunters who were also vampires.
Yet another Indian vampire hunter comic book.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the reason. The market was flooded. We couldn't find any funding for it.
What is next for the 1491s when the pandemic ends? Can we expect more videos? You mentioned that all 5 of you are in different parts of the world. It's sometimes hard to get together to make these things, but I know all your fans are always pining for more.
To that, like, we stopped touring. Our last show that we all did as the 1491s, a live show. The last 2 shows, we went from Juneau, Alaska, and did a wonderful show there for that amazing community. And then we went right to the Seminoles in Florida. We wrestled an alligator. We told some jokes. It was not a great show, but we had a great time. And we had no idea that the world was about to end. Had we known, you know what? It was a good show. This is the thing, though, is like, I got the job on writing on Rutherford Falls. Sterling got his show on FX picked up, and Migizi was writing Bark Skins. And there was a thing where we were like, we need to go hard on this Hollywood stuff because that's what the YouTube videos have always kind of been leading up to.
Right.
For us, it was like, you have to have this natural growth. I mean, like, I fucking love people who are doing TikTok, people who are doing all this internet stuff. It's like amazing to see all these Indians out here just like doing their shit at home. Like, and they're so funny. There's so many of them. But for us, like, holy shit, like, I'm over here chasing my child around trying to make sure that she doesn't eat stuff off of the floor, like a bunch of us, we got kids to feed now, and like, it's like, don't you climb trees? Like, no, we got bills and shit. You can't just be getting together and making YouTube videos all the time out of pocket. Like, it had to grow, it has to get bigger. And the same goes with our live performance stuff. Like, Between Two Knees raised the bar for us. Rutherford Falls, Reservation Dogs, like, these things are like everything that we want to do in terms of like representation. Like, we can talk about representation till the fucking cows come home, till the buffalo return. But all of this work has to elevate everything that we're doing, has to keep raising the bar. And so if we go back to live shows as the 1491s, the theater experience that you saw, Kliph, on Between Two Knees is the bar. And if we're going to be performing together as a comedy troupe, I mean, there's got to be some fucking fireworks. There has to be actual Tatanka on the stage, not just Tatanka means either, like the real buffalo. So well, that's what's next for the 1491s.
it's amazing, like the fact that all the 1491s, what you guys have done, has led to all these things. I mean, it's an exciting year, even though we know the world is shit, things are horrible. Yet there are these glimpses of
welcome to our world, white people.
But there's these amazing things that are coming to the fore right now. Rutherford Falls, Reservation Dogs. It's also a book these two gentlemen are featured in.
Yeah.
But there's all these cool things that are happening right now. And I know you dudes are very humble, but you got to be very proud at some of these strides and achievements in terms of representation and, both behind and in front of the camera. It's sort of an exciting time in a way. I feel bad saying it's an exciting time when the world is in a horrible time, but it is. There's these other things that are happening that are fucking counterbalancing it a little bit. It's cool. Rena Jeanette asks, I don't think you guys got past the title page, but if you had a title page, maybe you can answer this question.
It was just, it was called Liminality. It's really not important. It's
not important. What is the name of the Vampire Hunters comic?
Yeah.
It was called
one really quick question for Kliph Nesteroff.
Yeah, sure.
There's no one-to-one thing here, but of the 1491s, who is who in Monty Python? Who is the
equivalent of each
person?
person?
Because the only one I've been able to really figure out, I think, is that Ryan Redcorn is probably Eric Idle, but that's about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say that Dallas is John Cleese because there's just this presence of him, just this imposing presence that John Cleese has. So I would sort of see him as the sort of John Cleese character. I don't know. I would have to think about it long and hard. But that's one thing. That's a good point. I would like to, for those who are watching who haven't seen the 1491s perform together, and I make this point in the book, there's something about successful comedy teams, whether it's Monty Python or the Kids in the Hall or the 1491s or whoever, there's just sort of this inherent chemistry when you guys come together. Individually, the five of you are like talented artists on your own, but then when you come together, it's this different animals, like got this synergy, this chemistry that is just undeniable. And I think it's cool the fact that you guys are doing this other stuff. The 1491s has led to these other gigs, but eventually at some point, if you choose to, when you're 50, when you're 60, the five of you can come together to do something. I don't think that chemistry will ever disappear. It's like this incredible alchemy that just happens. Was that apparent when you guys started working together for the first time, that it just clicked? Even when we were doing the Wolfpack video, the Wolfpack auditions thing, the one thing that I noticed was that there was no one single take that we got through without laughing. Like every take that we did was broken by laughter. We went up until we were cracking up, and then it was there that I was like, hey, this is kind of something. Like this is, there's something that we all sort of have together, because we were just like, couldn't stop. It was like this weird release. There's this like joy in every take that we did, where we were just like cracking up the entire time. And it felt like, it felt like we found each other in a weird way. So
it felt like home.
Well,
whatever, man. Whatever. I don't care.
Don't even like you that much.
Yeah. Fuck you, man.
Well, I was so delighted to see you guys live. I always have been such a fan of the videos. I want to thank you again for taking part in this project and all the things that you're doing. And I am excited to see Rutherford Falls. I'm excited to see Reservation Dogs. And I'm excited to see representation for Indigenous people in show business come to the long overdue level.
Yeah,
So thank you guys, and thank everybody for listening and tuning in. And I'll throw it back to Jessica from Greenlight.
Well, real quick, I haven't said this out loud yet. Kliph, I really like the book, so thank you.
Thanks,
that's awesome.
Yes, getting the pitch in at the end. Thank you guys so much. It's all right? This is why we're here. Thank you guys so much for talking tonight. It was great to sort of hang out in the virtual room with you. You can get, we had a little real estate problem at Greenlight Bookstore if you want to learn more about this history, and you can find the 1491s on YouTube and many other places. Yeah, I'll just hold up some books. Thank you guys. This was a great night. Best of luck with everything you're working on. We'll look forward to seeing you more.
All right.
Thanks,
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.